Do you love the look of galaxy backgrounds, but don't want to spend a ton of time watercoloring and trying to figure out how to create them? Then this video is for you. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel, and this month, the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero main kit and add-ons includes stamps, dies, stencils, and foil plates that will help you create gorgeous galaxy and celestial backgrounds. There are a ton of gorgeous products this month that will help you create those stunning backgrounds. So I'm just gonna jump right into the card making. I'll be sure to share the new products along the way and how these different types of products can help you quickly and easily create those gorgeous backgrounds. Let's start out by taking a look at the main kit. There is a 6x8 stamp set with some really cute, whimsical little space cadets, planets, stars, a ladder to the clouds, and some really sweet sentiments like sending encouragement, you're a star, have a stellar day. There's also dies to cut out all of the images on that stamp set. So you can layer them or pop them up, and every single one of those is included. There's also an A2 cling mounted rubber stamp. You can see that the cut images are what's not going to stamp. Everything else is going to stamp. The little detailed images are what's going to stay either white or whatever cardstock you're working on. So I am doing 3-layer colors of dye inks from Hero Arts. I have some navy, some indigo, and then some of that neon blue. And I'm going to just stamp all those colors onto the stamp. Remember to take out your foam or Misty mouse pad if you're using a Misty, because the cling mounted rubber has that foam on it right away. So I love that 3-color background for a sky image. Now I'm going to choose the stamps that I'm going to use from the stamp set, and I am going to stamp them with some alcohol-friendly ink. First, I'm going to prime these stamps because I haven't used them yet, so I use a primer tool so that I get a great image right away. And then because I'm using multiple images, I use my Debbie tool to get even pressure along them. And you could see from one stamp, I was able to get a great image. Now I'm going to use my new favorite alcohol markers, the Oohoo's, that have a brush tip end and a fine tip end. And I used those in a recent video. Promised I would use them a lot more. So I am using them here to color in these images. Now, some of the little details don't leave a lot of room for blending and shading, but you can still do some of that on the larger images. You can mix and match colors, and also those fine tips really help you to get into small areas. And you can see that, like, the little space cadet's face and hair, very tiny little areas. And here I have a little more real estate to work with, so I can really play with blending those colors together. Then I'm going to use some pixie tape to hold those dies in place. I want to stamp a sentiment, but I wanted it to be on one of the colors that I inked up the background with, so I'm using my mid-tone navy to stamp this little swatch of ink, and then I'm going to dry it so that I can stamp the sentiment and heat emboss on that. Make sure to use lots of anti-static powder tool just to make sure the powder doesn't stick to all of that ink, just the Versamark ink. And then you can always buff off the excess anti-static powder after you've let the heat embossing dry and completely cool. Okay, now I'm going to cut this down to a sentiment strip. There are 2 levels of text here, 2 different fonts as well. So I'm going to leave a little more room than I normally would on the bottom for that Y of the day. And of course, you have seen me use these before. I love these Hero Arts drops to add little white pearl areas to everywhere around that card. Next up is the Celestial Bold Prints. This is a 6x6 cling mounted stamp. So this is another way to create one of those celestial or galaxy backgrounds. The first way we did was tricolor stamping. Now we're going to do some heat embossing with another stamp. And I'm using Silver Sparkle Heat Emboss powder this time, and I'm just going to pour it all over that background that I stamped with Versamark ink. Now, this background is the details are stamped. The last background was the background was stamped and the details were not stamped. So just two different ways to create a different look for a celestial or galaxy or star background. And that silver sparkle, when it's being heated, you really see it change from just silver to the glittery color. And of course, just keep buffing off the excess anti-static embossing powder because you don't want it to show up on that nice black cardstock that came with the Hero Arts kit this month. I am using some Arctic's metallic watercolors here. Now, I'm not going to color in every single image. I'm just going to use some details to add some color so that we don't just have black and silver glitter. We have a little bit of color in too. And I love galaxy backgrounds that have the black with the stars or maybe some dark purple with the stars, but also include the kind of the galaxy swirls of different colors. So this is a really easy way to achieve that because you're just basically adding little bits here and there inside the stamped lines. Okay, I cut out that rocket out of some silver cardstock, so I'm going to use that piece as my background. I cut the panel down to 4 by 5 1/4. I put some tape runner all around the parts that were not cut out. This is the Space Rocket Fancy dies. You can see you get the rocket, you get the exhaust, and the flames as well. I cut out the exhaust smoke out of some vellum, and I'm just putting a little bit of Ultra Bond behind it. And then I'm going to layer the flames on top. Now the flames cut out 2 pieces. So I cut the exterior one out of yellow and then I cut the interior one out of red. You just have to cut it out twice because it's all in one die. And then I'm going to layer those on top of each other. I think that looks so much fun. And then the rocket just goes right there on top of those 2 so that it looks like the exhaust and the flames are coming out of the back of the rocket. I'm going to fill in some of the little areas with the Hero Arts pearls. I have the white at the bottom and then the gold on the side. And then I'm going to use some Pink and Main, some liquid, clear liquid glue that's going to dry, a little bit dimensional and clear as well for the windows on the rocket. I'm going to use one of the main kit sentiments and I'm going to stamp and heat emboss it. So again, lots of anti-static powder, some stamping on black cardstock, and I'm using the silver glitter embossing powder from Hero Arts. And then I'm just going to heat set that until you see those glitters start to show through. And then of course, just buff off that excess powder, cut this down into a nice sentiment strip, and then use some black foam squares to pop it up. Black foam squares behind a black sentiment strip are so awesome because you don't see that bright white peeking out from white foam behind it. I'm going to add a little bit of the Hero Arts pearls all around that sentiment so that it kind of fits in more with that panel background as little stars. And I love the message. I also love how fun this is. There's just lots going on here and lots of color and just movement, and it was really easy to create that background. For the next background, we're going to start using stencils. This is the Star Cluster stencil. Again, I'm using that black cardstock. So I am going to hold it in place behind the stencil with some pixie tape. So I put 2 pieces, one on each side. Then I flip it over and I put 2 pieces holding it onto my glass mat. That's really going to hold it in place. I'm using the Hero Arts palette knife to apply the Hero Arts white pearl paste. And I am having it at different levels. I'm okay with that. Some is thicker, some is a little thinner, but you can see you can get a pretty even consistency even just with the palette knife. I'm going to peel off that stencil and I love the look of those stars. They're going to dry dimensional and they're going to dry white on that black background. I used a sentiment from the main kit again, and I am going to use the Celestial Fancy dies on this card as my images. So it comes with a sun, a cloud. The sun, you can clip out the face. There's just 2 little spots that adhere the face to the rays. So you can clip that out and you can have it be 2 different colors or 2 different types of medium. So I have mine both gold, but one is glitter and then one is foil. I'm going to put the foil down first. I decided to layer them on top of each other for even more rays. Now, you do not have to do this. It looks fantastic on its own, and you'll see that at the end of the video, I do another card with it. But for this card, I decided to just slightly offset the gold on top of the foil, and that looks pretty fantastic, I think. So try it, see if you like it, maybe do two different colors of cardstock or anything else. I also adhered the cloud and the moon with some Ultra Bond liquid glue. You need a strong liquid glue if you're going on top of that white pearl paste, and everything is at different dimensional levels. So definitely a strong liquid glue, and then hold it down with some acrylic blocks while it's drying so that everything will stay in place. This is such an easy space, galaxy, celestial background. So easy to create, and it looks fantastic behind lots of different themed cards. This is the Nebula Cluster Stencil, and I think this one creates what I would think of as a traditional galaxy background. Now, I am working on black cardstock again. So this time I'm going to take the white pearl paste and I'm going to add in a drop of different colors of my Distress Oxide refills. You can use any ink refills you have. Any of the Hero Arts ones will work as well. I'm using the Hero Arts palette knife. If your pearl paste is a little drier and has some clumps in it, just keep mixing it. They will mix in really easily, especially once you add that little droplet of the refills. And I'm going to add several different colors of the rainbow. You can see that I'm just kind of piling it on in different areas. So you know those galaxy backgrounds that have those beautiful colors and the black sky from space. That's what I'm trying to create pretty easily. Yes, it's a little bit messy and has to be cleaned up, but it is super easy. You don't have to deal with any watercolors, and you can just kind of slap this stuff on in different areas of that Nebula Cluster stencil, and it will create the look for you. So I'm going to add some green and then some blue as well, and I am just trying to cover up anything that is still black. So I don't want to mix these colors together as much as possible. Otherwise, you might end up with a bunch of brown, and that's not the look we're going for. It could be if you want to, but that's not the look I'm going for right now. So I'm just looking to kind of add in bits of paste here and there, and then I finally went to just white to fill in all the rest of those tiny little open areas of the stencil where I could still see black cardstock peeking through. Then when you peel that off, check that out. It kind of reminds me of those velvet black light paintings, but it also very much looks like a galaxy background, and super easy to create with some things that you probably already have in your stash if you have refills for your inks. I stamped and heat embossed with white embossing powder a sentiment that says, "You are the best thing in the universe." So I'm going to cut that down to a band that's going to stretch across the entire card. So I stamped that sentiment in the middle of the band. I'm going to use some tape runner to apply it. It stuck just fine. So if you have good strong tape runner, you can use that as well as strong liquid glue, and then just flipped over because I had had my band a little bit longer than the card. But how much fun is that? And I didn't have to mess around with watercolors at all. This is the Space Window die. I decided to cut it out of the silver mirror cardstock, and I'm going to layer it over black. So I'm just going to put some tape runner on the corners and open spots and closed spots of that die that cuts out. It cuts out little stars and little swoops, and then that kind of swoopy shape in the center as well. I filled in the stars with the gold pearls, and now I'm going to use the Arctic's acrylic markers to color in some of those open areas. Not the center, I'm going to use that for my sentiment and my main image, but just those little dots and also those little galaxy swirls on the side. And again, those Arctic's markers I've used before, and they really do work on black cardstock, and they're much more affordable than other acrylic markers. This is the Color Layering Stellar Flowers bundle. It comes with stamps that are layering stamps and dies that cut out the images. So I'm going to use some bright Hero Arts inks to stamp the flower that looks kind of like a celestial flower. There's also a stem for it that has 2 layers as well. I'm going to use that indigo as kind of my main color that goes around both the flower and the stem. And then I'm going to use the dies to cut these pieces out. Then I'm going to use one of the sentiments from this stamp set that says "Have a stellar birthday," and I'm going to stamp and heat emboss this. Now, of course, I've already adhered down all this stuff, so I'm trying to avoid the adhesive around it. So I poured on the embossing powder and then I just kind of flip it over so that the embossing powder doesn't get stuck underneath that die cut that I've already adhered down. And then I want to carefully heat set that so I don't melt or warp the rest of the card, and then buff off that excess anti-static embossing powder. And then I'm going to adhere down the stem and pop up the flower. And last but not least for this card, I did cut out some of the other images without stamping them. So there's a moon, star, planet, and other little star, and I just added those in silver mirror cardstock, and then some teeny tiny little stars with the white pearls that I love so much I add them to almost every card. This is the Twinkling Stars hot foil plate. I love that Hero Arts is coming out with hot foil plates. They're so much fun to use with a hot foil system. So I'm using my Glimmer hot foil system. I have the plate on there all warmed up, and then I place some gold foil and a piece of white cardstock, and I am going to run that through my die cut machine with both of those plates. And you can see when you peel it off, it just creates this gorgeous star background that really you could use for a ton of different cards. So you will probably see this one many times because I love that look. I love stars. I think they're so much fun for lots of different cards. Now I'm going to stamp and heat emboss on white cardstock. So I'm reusing that sentiment I used before, "You're the most amazing thing in the universe." I'm going to anti-static powder the cardstock. I'm going to stamp it up with Versamark ink, but this time I'm going to use Hero Arts gold embossing powder to go along with that gold foil background. I'm going to heat set that, and I love the look of their gold embossing powder, whether it's on white, whether it's on black, it just looks so phenomenal. I did the band again that sits from the left side of the panel to the right side of the panel with the stamped sentiment in the middle. And then remember how I said I would use those celestial dies again? I am going to layer the gold. This time I'm not cutting the face out. I just left it all in gold, but I'm going to layer it on top of a die cut of the same in white cardstock just to give it a little bit of lift off the background so it really shows off on that gorgeous star background, and just use some liquid adhesive to place this down, and then that star is matted on gold foil cardstock as well. Lots of gold here. Love the look. Super easy to create with that foil plate. I love stars on card making because they can be used on so many different types of cards and for different types of people. But of course, I would love to hear what your favorite was this month, so let me know down in the comments below. YouTube thinks you might be interested in this video, so why don't you check that out next? As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. Oh, football's on. That's okay, we'll work around it. Is it too much? Too much talky-talky?